They thought he was just a mechanic with a bad attitude. But Jason Statham never walks into a courtroom without a reason. Fined by a sharp-tongued judge in a tiny town he didn't even mean to drive through, Jason keeps his mouth shut until he sees a pattern. She isn't corrupt. She's brilliant. And someone is using her genius against her. Truth doesn't always wear a badge. You can't fix justice by following the rules. And this time, Jason Statham's not fighting the system. He's teaming up with it. Before we continue, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Comment below. The town didn't even have a stoplight. Jason Statham pulled off the highway sometime around dusk. The kind of fading sun that turned the horizon gold and dust red. He didn't need a reason. He never did. Just felt something in the air, like the road was telling him to turn left instead of right. The first building he passed was a diner. The second was a courthouse. It all looked like a postcard someone forgot to send. Brick walls, faded flags, a population small enough to know every lie by its first name. Jason parked outside the gas station with a busted neon sign that blinked like it was tired pretending to be alive. He grabbed a bottle of water and walked out, only to find a deputy parked behind his car, ticket book in hand. Tail lights out, the deputy said, not looking up, license and registration. Jason didn't argue. He handed them over, wordless. The man squinted at the paper, then at Jason. Registration's expired. Jason nodded. Wasn't planning on stopping. The deputy smiled without humor. Nobody ever is. You'll need to see the judge in the morning. And just like that, Jason was part of the system again. The next day, the courthouse smelled like old paper and coffee that died too long ago. A dozen folding chairs filled the lobby. A wooden plaque read, Judge Renn, above a door that looked more like a closet than a courtroom. She walked in without a word. Black robe, low ponytail, no makeup, no warmth. She looked younger than Jason expected. Early 30s, maybe, but her eyes? They didn't blink unless they meant to. She carried herself like someone who grew up arguing with people twice her size and still walked away winning. She didn't ask him to explain himself. Didn't even ask him why he was there. Jason Statham, she said, reading from a printout. Expired registration, defective taillight, no proof of current insurance. Fines $500 even. Pay the clerk by end of day. Jason tilted his head. No warning. Her eyes lifted, slow and sharp. You're not from here. That makes you responsible for your car and your choices. Next. She moved on like he was a footnote in her day. Jason didn't flinch. Just pulled a money clip from his pocket and peeled off 500s, crisp and clean. He handed them to the clerk without looking back. But as he walked out, something didn't sit right. Not with her words, with her delivery. She hadn't been angry. She hadn't been smug. She'd been perfect, too perfect. Every citation, every fine, delivered like she'd rehearsed it. Not just for him, but for the system. She wasn't talking to Jason Statham. She was talking to something bigger. Or hiding from it. He sat in his car for a few minutes, watching people come and go. No one smiled. No one complained. Every person left that building looking smaller than when they walked in. Jason turned the key, but didn't drive. Instead, he leaned back in the seat, tapping his thumb on the wheel. He'd been in enough courtrooms to know what justice sounded like, and this wasn't it. This was something else. Something quieter, colder. The next few hours, he drove around town, not going anywhere in particular. He passed shuttered shops, dusty lots, and fields that used to grow things but now stood dead and yellow. He saw a man hammering a sold sign into the soil of a family-owned grocery store. Another one being boarded up right next to it. Jason got dinner at a place called Murphy's. Chicken fried steak and silence on the menu. The waitress didn't talk much. The locals didn't talk at all. When he asked about the judge, she paused just long enough to answer without looking him in the eye. Smart girl, she said. Too smart for here. Jason nodded, sipped his water, and didn't press. But the seed was planted. She wasn't a small-town tyrant. She was a storm contained in the wrong jar. And something told Jason that jar was about to crack. The next morning, the town felt heavier. Not darker, just heavier, like the pavement itself had secrets. Jason Statham stopped at the only gas station in a 5-mile radius, hoping for bad coffee and a clearer head. What he got instead was a voice, sharp, southern, and just careless enough to drop something important. She's too damn smart to be stuck here. That's what I'm saying. 2 men by the soda fridge. One wore a mechanic's shirt, the other a suit 2 years past relevance. Ever since that land case last year, everything's gone sideways, the suited one said, grabbing a Gatorade. She signed off on half those seizures, whether she knew it or not. Jason pretended to browse a rack of wiper fluid. He didn't need more, but he needed this. He walked out without saying a word. That night, he didn't drive far. Parked across from the courthouse, window cracked, watching. The building sat there like it was daring someone to question it. Most of the lights were off, except one in the back hallway. At 11:43 p.m., a man entered through the rear door. Older, gray suit. Moved like someone who didn't want to be seen but wasn't afraid of being caught. He was out by midnight. 15 minutes, one locked briefcase, no witnesses, except Jason. The next morning, Jason walked to the courthouse doors again. Same quiet posture, same unreadable face. He approached the counter and leaned slightly forward. I'd like to contest my fine. The clerk blinked confused. You already paid it. I changed my mind. She hesitated. Sir, we don't really do that here. Jason smiled politely. Then I'd like to speak to the judge. Respectfully. The clerk left for the back. Came back alone. She's unavailable. Jason raised an eyebrow. Lunch break at 9:12 a.m.? The clerk's mouth opened, but no words came. Just a forced smile. Jason walked out, not bothering to hide the suspicion in his eyes. He didn't like systems that flinched under simple questions. Later that day, he followed her. He didn't tail her like a spy. He just stayed a few car lengths behind, driving the way he always did. Smooth, measured, watchful. She drove past the outskirts of town, out where the road cracked and the sky opened wide. Stopped at a place that didn't belong in any legal textbook. Lakeside Pines Memory Facility. The sign was weathered. Half the letters were peeling. Jason parked across the street. She got out of her car, carrying a brown paper bag. Walked through the doors like she'd done it 100 times. She stayed for 42 minutes. When she came out, she was wiping her eyes with the edge of her sleeve, but not crying, just remembering how to breathe. Jason waited until she drove off, then walked inside. The nurse at the desk didn't look up from her crossword. Visiting someone? She asked. Jason pointed to the guest log. Judge Renn. The nurse hesitated. She sees her father. Every Thursday. Jason glanced at the clock. It was Thursday. The old man sat in a room with wide windows and thicker silence. His face was carved by time, but his eyes held embers. Law books lined the shelf. Old court cases. Federal memoranda. Framed articles from the New York Times. Decades old. A judge's gavel rested in a display case, dusted and polished. Jason read the nameplate under the gavel. Hahn, Franklin Renner, U.S. District Court, Southern District of New York. The man who trained her. Jason didn't speak. Just took it in. All of it. She wasn't just good. She was born into the fire. That evening, Jason sat alone at the edge of town, just outside the range of streetlights. The wind rattled the trees, whispering things no one wanted to say out loud. The judge wasn't crooked, but someone was using her brilliance. Jason looked down at the ticket, still folded in his glove box. It wasn't about the fine anymore. It was about what that fine was hiding. She didn't scare easy. Jason had followed plenty of trails in his life. Paper, blood, whispered lies. But this one felt colder, cleaner, like someone polished their crime to shine under courtroom lights. And she, the judge of the fire in her spine, was either too blind to see it or too bound to break it. Jason didn't believe in blind. He caught up with her just after dusk, outside the nursing home parking lot. Her hands were still trembling from the visit, but her voice was steel. "You followed me," she said, not surprised. "You led me," Jason replied. She looked at him, hard, What do you want? Truth. Yours, mostly. She scoffed, turning toward her car. You don't know me. No, but I know systems that eat people like you. That stopped her. Jason stepped closer, not threatening, just present. You've got precedent memorized like song lyrics. You quote rulings most people have never heard of. You rule fast, precise, like you're under a clock no one sees. So I'll ask again, why are you still here? She didn't answer. Didn't need to. The next morning, Jason made a quiet visit to the county records office. He didn't need credentials, just calm eyes, casual questions, and the name of the deputy who first cited him. Bureaucrats talk when they think no one's listening. He started pulling files. Land transfers, property seizures, eminent domain rulings. At first glance, it looked like a town cleaning house, revitalization through rezoning. But Jason saw the pattern. It wasn't random. Every order came within a week of a major real estate offer. Every ruling tied back to Judge Renn's courtroom. And everyone had her signature, except they didn't. Jason stared at a file from 3 months ago. The signature was crisp, but the loop in the R was too wide. On another, it was too sharp. It was the kind of detail you only noticed if you'd seen someone sign their name under pressure, on a bench, in front of a room full of strangers. Someone was copying her. Jason traced the document origin. All digital. All stamped from the court's internal system. Someone with access. He returned to the clerk's office, waited until the usual buzz died down, and slipped behind a counter like he belonged there. The clerk, young, nervous, and badly hiding guilt, jumped. I need you to look at something, Jason said. Calm. Quiet. I can't. You can. And you will. He laid down the forged order beside a verified one. Tell me you don't see it. The kid cracked like old drywall. It's not her. It's not just her. I mean, she signed some, sure, but there were logins she didn't know about. After hours. We were told not to question them. Who told you? The clerk swallowed hard. Mr. Callan. Jason remembered the name. County Business Development Head. The same man he'd seen sneaking into the courthouse that night. They said it was cleanup. Speeding up paperwork. She's too slow, they said. Jason grabbed the file, already heading for the door. She's not slow. She's precise. He found her that evening at her father's bedside, reading to him from a Supreme Court opinion. He waited until she finished the page before speaking. They're using you. She stood. I know. Jason's eyes narrowed. You knew. I suspected. I couldn't prove it. Everything was sealed, scrubbed, logged behind firewalls. Every time I asked for records, I was told they didn't exist. He placed the documents on the table. They exist now. She scanned them, hands tightening as her eyes moved across each altered line, each forged ruling. That's my name, she whispered. But that's not my judgment. Jason nodded. Exactly. She stared at him, something changing behind her eyes. Not fear, not rage, resolve. That night, she invited him into her office, locked the door behind them, pulled out a flash drive she kept in a hollowed-out law book. I started making backups after the first case that didn't feel right. I thought maybe I was imagining it, but I wasn't. Together, they pored over every file, every login, every discrepancy. She brought the mind. He brought the instinct. Jason told her things she didn't learn in law school. How people act when they're about to run. How cowards sign their crimes in someone else's name. When she leaned back in her chair, exhausted but burning, Jason finally asked, So, what now? Her voice didn't tremble. We take it up the ladder. And just like that, the gavel didn't fall. It rose. At some point in the night, the law books became pillows and the evidence became their only comfort. Jason Statham sat across from her in the judge's chambers, the lights low, papers stacked like barricades between them. She didn't look tired. She looked ready. Like someone who'd been waiting her whole life for a war she didn't want to fight, but wouldn't walk away from now that it was here. She spoke first. They used my login to approve every land seizure after hours. Most of them happened between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m., when I was home or here, off the network. Jason nodded. Digital fingerprints? She turned the laptop toward him. Buried, but not gone. Callan didn't just alter orders. He ran them through a secure ghost terminal routed through my account. Problem is, he got lazy. Jason smirked. They always do. She clicked through time-stamped logs, subtle differences, tiny inconsistencies. But enough. Enough to bury a man, if they could get it into the right hands. We need someone higher, she said. Not local, not state. Federal? She hesitated. I have a contact. Former professor. U.S. attorney for the Northern District. Jason leaned forward. You trust him? She looked away. I did. Before all this. He didn't push. Truth had its own clock. They called him the next morning. The man's voice was gravel and suspicion, but when she explained the extent of the evidence, how far it reached, how deep it bled, he gave her a location. I'll meet you. Quietly. No paper trail. Bring everything. They agreed on a safe location 2 towns over. An abandoned post office, once converted into a temporary records hall. Neutral ground. Off-grid. Forgotten by most, but remembered by those who needed remembering. They packed everything. Laptops, printouts, copies of orders, logs, even the forged signatures Jason had found. As they loaded up, Jason caught something strange out corner of his eye. Smoke. He stepped outside and saw the thin, dark curl rising from downtown. The courthouse. He ran. By the time they reached it, fire trucks circled, but did nothing more than watch it burn. A deputy, one Jason recognized, smiled as he said, "Electrical short. Real shame." The whole place was going up. Files. Cases. Her bench. Jason didn't hesitate. He kicked through the side entrance before anyone could stop him. Inside it was heat and chaos. The air thick with smoke, the walls groaning with flame. But Jason moved like he'd done this before, because he had. Not fire, maybe, but rescue. The judge's office was already half-torched. The edges of her shelves blackened. Jason tore through drawers, grabbing what he could. Flash drives, sealed folders, her personal log. By the time he stumbled out, coughing, eyes watering, his arms were full and his jacket scorched. She didn't say thank you. She didn't have to. They drove that night. When cutting to the open highway, evidence riding in the back seat, like a sleeping witness. The silence between them was heavy, but not uncomfortable, just full. Finally, she spoke. You ever trust the system? Jason kept his eyes on the road. Once. She waited. He didn't. Eventually, he said, put my faith in a prosecutor who said the right things. Watch the guilty man walk. My testimony lacked context. And after, I stopped playing by their rules. She nodded slowly, folding that truth into hers. When they reached the drop site, the prosecutor was waiting. Older now, more gray, but sharp. He reviewed the files in silence. Didn't comment, just moved from page to page, folder to folder. Then he looked up. This is enough. He made 2 calls. By morning, unmarked SUVs rolled into town. Agents seized computers, offices, even Callan's home. The town woke up to headlines that didn't just whisper, they roared. Fraud, forgery, federal investigation. The deputy who smiled at the fire, handcuffed on the courthouse steps. The clerk offered immunity in exchange for a full confession. And her, the judge, cleared, fully, publicly. Jason watched from the car, not in shadows, just outside the frame. She walked out of the building, head high, robe gone but power intact. Not a pawn anymore, a player. What would you do if the very system you swore protect turned on you? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about justice. The town didn't sleep that night. Sirens came without warning. Black Suburbans rolled in like a silent parade. And for once, no one knew where to look for answers, because the ones asking questions had badges no one in this town had ever seen before. Jason Statham stood beside the judge, quiet, unmoving, as the courthouse turned into a crime scene. This time, no one asked him to leave. They watched the agents carry out hard drives, charred folders, call logs. Whatever the fire hadn't swallowed, Jason had saved. The rest? The truth was already backed up 3 times over. They weren't just prepared. They were finished. But justice never comes clean. At 3:27 a.m., Jason got a call from the prosecutor. There was one file missing. A sealed order from 8 months ago, predating the digital forgeries. One she had actually signed. One that would muddy the waters if Callan's lawyers found it. It wasn't illegal, just controversial. An early ruling where she'd sided with the county on a technicality. No corruption, just consequence. She sat at the edge of the motel bed, staring at her hands. "I thought I was helping someone keep their home," she whispered. "Didn't see how the zoning clause would override the appeal. I never thought it'd be used like that." Jason sat across from her, elbows on his knees. "You were playing chess. They were flipping the board." Her eyes met his. "And now they'll use that one ruling to say I was on all of it." "They won't, because they can't prove motive, and the pattern says otherwise." "But public opinion doesn't wait for court dates." Jason stood, pacing. "Then we get ahead of it." She looked up. "How?" "We leak it ourselves." She blinked. "Own it," Jason said. "Say you rule by the law. That your mistake was believing others would do the same. You don't run from that. You lean in." She was quiet for a long time, then nodded once. They held the press conference at dawn. Unplanned, unfiltered. Jason stood behind the cameras, out of frame, as she stepped forward, eyes clear, voice steady. She told the truth about the ruling, the timeline, the betrayal. She didn't flinch when reporters asked if she was part of the scheme. She didn't dodge when they pressed about why she hadn't spoken sooner. "I believed in the process," she said. "And when I saw the cracks, I started saving everything I could, because that's what the law is supposed to do. Protect the people when the system forgets how." The media didn't know what to do with her. She wasn't crying. She wasn't defensive. She was brilliant, measured, raw. And suddenly, people started listening. Jason stood outside the courthouse that afternoon, arms crossed as the prosecutor approached. "You ever think about staying put?" the man asked. Jason didn't answer, just watched her through the glass as she handed off files to the federal agents, unbothered by the attention. She moved like someone who'd already let the worst burn away. "She's got a future," Jason finally said. "Give her space to build it." The prosecutor smiled. "I think she's already started." That evening, she found Jason leaning against his car, the sunset cutting a crimson line across the horizon. "Leaving?" Jason nodded. "Always." She stepped closer, arms folded. "You could stay." "I don't fix things by sticking around." "No," she said, "but you give people enough courage to stay themselves." He almost smiled. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a copy of the federal investigator's summary. One sentence circled. "Judge Renn's conduct during and after the incident is a model of ethical resilience and judicial integrity." She handed it to him. "In case you ever doubt what happens when someone listens." He took it, tucking it into his jacket without a word. They didn't hug. They didn't need to. He got in the car, turned the key, and rolled down the window. "You're going to do good things." She stepped back, hands in her pockets. "You already did." Jason drove off as the streetlights flickered on behind him. He didn't look back. Didn't need to, because this time he wasn't walking away from a mess. He was walking away from something whole. The headlines faded, like they always do. In 3 weeks, the town had a new interim judge. The courthouse got power washed and patched. Callan was transferred to a federal holding facility. And the people, well, they still came to court, but they did it differently now. Quieter, straighter, with questions they never used to ask. Judge Renn didn't put her robe back on immediately. She sat behind a desk in a plain office inside a federal building 2 counties over. Advisory role only. No rulings. No gavel. Just reviewing cases, writing opinions, and watching the law from the inside out. They offered her promotion. She said no for now. Jason Statham never called, never wrote, never said goodbye, but she knew he was out there. One morning, she stood outside the nursing home, holding a copy of the Wall Street Journal. Page 4, a column about legal reform in rural counties. Her name was in the footnotes, just one line, but it was enough. Inside, her father sat with his head tilted toward the window, sunlight resting gently across his cheek. He didn't speak much anymore. But when she said, "They cleared my name," something flickered in his eyes. Maybe memory, maybe pride. She didn't need to know which. Across the country, in a desert town with no name, Jason pulled into a gas station with cracked pavement and heat lines rising off the hood. His tail light was still broken, still unrepaired, but that's how he liked it. It reminded him he wasn't finished. Inside, a boy stood crying next to the register. 10, maybe 11, trying to explain why he didn't have enough cash for coolant. His mom's car had overheated 2 miles back. The clerk shrugged, uninterested. Jason stepped up, paid for the coolant, tossed in a couple of water bottles. The kid stared. "You okay?" Jason asked. The boy nodded. "Yeah, I didn't think anyone would help." Jason looked down at him, voice low and even. "Most people won't. That's why you remember the ones who do." The boy ran out with the bag. "No, thank you." Just wide eyes and fast feet. Jason didn't need the thanks. He just needed the silence that followed. The kind that only shows up after something right is done. Back in her temporary office, Judge Renn wrote a letter. She never mailed it, just folded it once and slid it into a drawer under lock and key. To the man who reminded me that justice isn't about knowing the law. It's about knowing when to feel it. She didn't owe him anything. But sometimes truth deserved to be written, even if it's never read. That night, in a quiet stretch of nowhere, Jason drove under a sky full of stars, his engine humming like a promise. No destination, just motion, just a road. And in the mirror, the past didn't chase him. It thanked him. Justice doesn't always walk through front doors. Sometimes it rides in quiet, with dust on its boots and no badge to prove it belongs. Sometimes it doesn't speak until it has to. And sometimes it just listens, really listens, to the silence everyone else has learned to ignore. Jason Statham never came to that town looking for trouble. He wasn't searching for someone to save. He didn't even know her name. But justice doesn't wait for introductions. He saw what most people miss. Not a corrupt judge, not a reckless authority figure, but a woman trapped beneath the weight of her own brilliance, surrounded by cowards in suits and snakes in systems. And instead of walking away like most people would have, Jason did what he always does. He stayed long enough to make it right. Not with noise, not with threats, but with truth. He didn't fix her. She didn't need fixing. What he did was believe her, before the facts were fashionable, before the media wanted her story, before the evidence caught fire. Because Jason Statham doesn't care about headlines. He cares about rightness. And in a world where people hide behind procedures, that kind of belief is louder than any gavel. The judge, she rose. Not because someone handed her the rope, but because she climbed, blistered palms and all. And when she reached the top, when she finally breathed free again, she didn't scream for revenge. She whispered something even more powerful. "Let's rebuild." Jason never stayed to see the rebuilding. He never does. He's not built for ceremonies or ribbons. But every person who walked through a courtroom after that walked through his shadow, too. That's the funny thing about justice. It's not made in marble halls or wrapped in Latin phrases. It's made in moments. Small ones. A hand on a shoulder. A voice in the dark. A question that no one else had the courage to ask. Jason doesn't need credit. He doesn't need applause. He just needs a reason. And once he finds one, the world gets just a little more honest. So if you ever see a man at the edge of town, quiet, hands in his pockets, eyes that see more than they show, ask yourself one thing. What broken thing might he be here to fix? Because if Jason Statham is in town, someone's about to find the truth.